Happy Thursday, everybody. I appreciate you so much for being here with me this evening. I want to dive in tonight, ask everybody first where you're tuning in from. Always love to know where everybody is coming from and any questions, thoughts that you might have. Today, as usual, we're going to dive straight in. There's a couple of things about Georgia that just happened this week that I want to make sure that I share with you because obviously that's why we're here every week live. And then we will jump straight in and go through the topic of how much you actually need to earn each year to be able to afford a home living here in the state of Georgia. This article came across my desk this week. It's kind of ironic because I just actually shot the video. If you guys saw it on Tuesday, I released it just talking about the cost of living here, everything from groceries to gas to home prices, utilities, everything like that. So if you didn't get a chance to watch that, definitely go back and check it out. That's as of 2024. I'm using myself as a household of 4 on that video. But this article came across my desk actually the day after that. And it was very interesting to see kind of all across America, the different prices that are not prices, but the different earnings that it says that you need to have, the wages that you need to be able to afford a home. And in Georgia, I have to say, I was a little bit surprised. So I definitely want to make sure that we're getting into that. But first, jump on, say hello. Happy to see everybody. Lone, I'm so glad to see you this week. I hope everything is going well for you. Anthony actually texted me right before the show and said he is right in the middle of work and not going to be able to join us this week, but that's okay because I know he'll join and probably text me later and we'll be able to chat. So diving straight in. So this week, let me just throw this up there. So Governor Kemp actually signed the budget for the 2025 fiscal year that they're going to be looking at. And so he literally came down to the wire. It was literally the last day that he had to sign. And in that, he actually signed the budget with raises for 300,000 teachers and state workers. So it basically said that all of the teachers throughout the state are going to get a raise. And then any of the state workers, including police, firefighters, everybody that basically takes care of us is going to be included in on that. So I personally think that that is amazing. I have 2 kids of my own, and while I love them greatly, I could not deal with a classroom full of 25 to 30 of them for 8 hours a day. Our teachers make such a difference. So this was really exciting to see. Georgia as a whole, I don't know if you guys keep up with this, but if you're thinking about making a move to Georgia or just living in Georgia and kind of trying to keep up with things, Georgia has actually been seeing a major surplus of taxes. And so they've been kind of putting that aside. And so this year they were able to take some of that money and put it into areas that will actually benefit. I know in that budget, they also allocated a lot of money to go to the Georgia Pre-K program, also to the Hope Scholarship program, and then to SPLOST, which is working on our roads, which if you live here in Georgia, I feel like is a constant. They're never not working on the roads. I feel like they pave a different road every single week, but I'm not the one that's running that. So I guess I'll keep my thoughts and comments to myself. So moving on, let's see. Hello, Miss Betty. Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining. Would love to hear if you guys have any comments, questions, for the week, because there's been a lot of good news. So one of the next things that I wanted to share with you guys that I thought was really exciting, because I think that this is a major thing and it goes back to the teachers that I was just talking about. I can share personally, my daughter this year has had some of the most amazing teachers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I can't tell you the difference that teachers make. If you sit back and think, I'm sure that all of us, I know for myself specifically, I can think of at least a couple of teachers that were literally life changing from me, whether it was keeping me in line or whether it was finding my passion for school again, helping me pass a class. There's always that one teacher that you can really think about made a huge difference. And Georgia just made the top 10 places for graduates to move to. And I thought that that was really exciting. And I think that that's really has a lot to do with the job market here. We've got Microsoft, we've got Facebook, we've got Google. There's so many tech companies that are here. And so I think it's a fantastic thing that we made the top 10 for graduates to want to move to. A lot of people that are moving here that have just graduated college, there's also a really good paying job on the other end of that move. And so I think that's fantastic. One of the things that I found really interesting was I have a client that moved here in 2021, I guess it was, and he actually worked for Microsoft. He was coming from the West Coast. And the whole reason that he was moving here is he was kind of helping get this side of things set up and moving. And I asked him, out of all the places in the US, why Atlanta, Georgia? And he said that one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is the number one place that they pull people from is Georgia Tech. So they really look at the graduates that come out of Georgia Tech. And he said it was so much easier for us to move here because they needed another place to have an office. And he said it just made so much sense to have the office here close to Georgia Tech, because then we can just interview those graduates right away instead of having to fly them to the West Coast or do things through Zoom. We're right here local. They can literally just walk over. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And then some of the other places that made the top 10, a couple of these I found interesting. Austin, Texas. That's no surprise. That was actually the number one spot for graduates. Bloomington, Minnesota. That one caught me off guard. I don't know anything about Bloomington. I personally think that it would be really cold there. Maybe I'm just, being a little extra, but that one kind of caught me off guard. Then Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Richmond, Virginia. That one did not surprise me at all. I feel like anywhere in Virginia or close to DC, you're going to have a lot of people that are jumping into those jobs, especially, government jobs and, more tech jobs, things like that. So a lot of good stuff there. Yes. Looking at the comment, teachers are definitely underpaid as well as public safety. That is for sure. The job that they do, I don't think I could. So teachers are instrumental, very much so. Hopefully we'll start to see their pay catch up with what they're actually worth. But the big thing for today, and like I said, I found this very interesting, is how much do you actually need to earn in order to live here in the state of Georgia? And so there was actually 50 metros across the U.S. that they kind of, went through, looked at some of the different things there. They talked to some of the different people, kind of figured out what they're making, and really tried to get an idea of how much you need to earn in different areas. So with Atlanta, Georgia, the median home list price is $415,000. So the median household income required is $108,000. Now, I have to say, I was actually pretty surprised by this because I know quite a few families that do not make $100,000 a year and they own a home. And so I really had to start thinking about it and think, do they own a home? Have they owned their home long enough that it's because they bought prior to the pandemic, and so they were able to get a home at a lower cost and at a better interest rate, a lower interest rate? Or did they buy somewhere in between? And it was actually quite a mix. And so looking at that, I feel like $108,000 might be a little bit on the high side. I have quite a few people that are in the $70,000 range that have just qualified here recently to purchase a home. Now, obviously, that's going to depend on quite a few different factors, like how much money you're putting down on the home, and if you're making any bonuses, anything like that is always going to apply. But that being said, looking at this, $108,000 a year is quite a bit of money. So, but you also have to think about if there's two of you living in the home. So that could mean that each spouse is making $50,000 each, or obviously one could be making, 70,000, the other's 30. So it really just kind of breaks down. But if you have two people working, it seems a lot more manageable compared to one. But that kind of breaks things down. And it's funny because I've actually talked to my kids about this. And given my kids are only 12 and 14 right now, but I've told them, by the time you're looking at purchasing a home, it's going to be virtually unaffordable. It really is. And so if you're really wanting to get in there, you're going to have to look at purchasing a home and having roommates that you're renting out other rooms to until you get to the point that you've moved up the ladder in your job to where you are able to afford it on your own, or you're getting married and so you'll have the other spouse income. But unless you have a job right out of the gate making $100,000 a year, which surprisingly this day and age, there are a lot of jobs, especially here in Atlanta, and tech jobs that are paying that right out of the gate. But unless you have that type of job, you're going to be looking at probably doing a roommate situation, which is not a negative thing if it gets you into home ownership early. So one of the things here, they kind of went around. And so in the Atlanta area, Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, the median listing price, $415,000. What you really need to have an income of $108,000. Now, keep in mind, this is to live comfortably. I always say try to live comfortably. Nobody likes being house poor. If you've got this great house, but you can't take a vacation or you can't go out to eat, you're living on, ramen noodles and PBJ, which, don't get me wrong, I love those, but I don't want them every single day. You don't want to be house poor. Nobody wants to be house poor. However, I will say, if you look at this here now, New York, the New Jersey area, New York, median listing price of $769,000. And you need to be making around $218,000 in order to be purchasing a home there. And looking at these, look at the next one, Nashville, median listing price of around $573,000, and then an income of around $142,000. Now, I know you're not supposed to call out Atlanta. We all know that we still do. The city of just under 500,000 residents has a booming job market, low cost of living, and lots of young people with college under their belt. Now, that being said, looking at some of those other locations, and the top 4 spots of the most expensive places to live. Tell me where you guys thought that was, or think that is. Not thought, because it's still active. California. All 4 top spots for metros that are the most expensive place to live are in California, with Los Angeles being one of the most expensive, San Diego coming in second. Those places, you have to be making around $250,000 to $268,000 a year out of the gate to be able to afford a home. Looking at all of this has made me really understand. So I've had so many clients over the last 3 years that were moving from Miami, that were moving from New Jersey, New York, California, and all of them have just talked about the cost of living. Like some of the ones that are actively working with me right now, they're coming up Saturday to kind of do a tour of everything and possibly put a house under contract. They said, Ashley, if we continue to live in Florida, we will never be able to be homeowners. We just will never make it because of the cost of living. And it's not just the price of the house that we have to consider. It's the insurance that's going up because of everything going on in Florida. It's the HOA fees that Florida is known for, having these beautiful HOAs and homes that are very well taken care of, but you're paying usually a monthly fee, where here in Georgia, you're more paying an annual fee unless you're in a townhome community. But in Florida, they said that the HOA per month can add anywhere from $250 to $500 a month on top of what you're paying for your mortgage. That's astronomical. And then on top of that is the taxes, the property taxes. So here in Georgia, I shared with you guys on the video that I just released on Tuesday, my personal property taxes were just over $4,000 for my annual bill for last year, 2024. My client shared with me that his bill, his property bill in Florida in Miami-Dade County was over $10,000, and they do not have a large property at all. And he said it's just unaffordable for us, and we will never be able to get to the point where we can retire comfortably. And that's why they made the decision to go ahead and make the move to Florida. So, with all of that being said, that's a really big piece to the puzzle, looking at all of these numbers and how much you really need to earn in all of these different locations. That kind of pieced it together to me why people are still making the move to Georgia. Because obviously, being born and raised here for the last 40 years, I've seen it from 89 cents a gallon back in the day to now we're at $4 a gallon. And I feel like that's just astronomical. But when you're coming from areas where it's $7 a gallon, $8 a gallon, and you come here, it looks really affordable. And according to the top 50 metros, Georgia is still a very, very much affordable place to live compared to so many of these other metro areas. So looking at that, um, let me go over, well, maybe it's not on there. I was going to share with you guys, it also really depends on within Georgia where you're purchasing, because I can say the state of Georgia as a whole, you need to be making $108,000, but that's just really unrealistic, because if you're living in the city of Atlanta, you're probably going to be paying taxes on city tax, and you're going to be paying taxes on county tax. So Fulton County and city of Atlanta. So that's going to bump you up in that tax bracket. And then homes are much more expensive if you're looking in areas like Milton or Alpharetta, city of Atlanta. And so in those areas specific, Brookhaven even, those are areas that are going to be pricier. You're going to be looking at a higher average home price. You're probably looking closer to somewhere between 700 to 800,000 for an average home price in those areas. So those areas, you're definitely going to be needing to have a higher income to afford those specific locations. Now, if you're looking a little bit further out, going to the suburbs, the metro Atlanta area that I talk about a lot, Suwanee, Beaufort, Duluth, even going over into Lake Cumming and the Dawsonville area. If you're willing to go just a little bit further out, most of those areas, you're looking about 40 minutes to an hour to get into the city, just depending on if you need to commute or not. But so many of us now are working remotely, so we're not having to drive in. And if that's you, the suburbs might be a really great place for you to check out, for the simple fact that it's going to be a lot more affordable. Right now, if you look in the city of Dawsonville, you can actually find new home construction for around $500,000 to $550,000, and that's brand new construction. So that's hard to find at that price. Now, the one thing I do hear a lot of people complain about is the yard sizes. You're not right on top of each other, but you also don't have a super large lot. And unfortunately, you're just not going to find that anymore when it comes to new construction, unless you're getting into the higher price points, probably around 750 or higher. And the reason for that is the cost of land here in Georgia has just skyrocketed through the roof. And so as builders are buying up land to be able to build on, they're having to either tighten in and give a smaller lot, which then provides a less expensive home price, or they can provide that larger lot. However, you're going to be charged for that land. And so that's when you get into those higher price points. So it's kind of flipping a coin. Do you want to pay more and have that lot, or would you like to sacrifice that lot and be able to have a little bit more reasonable price? So that's one of the things that you have to really consider when you're looking at new construction. One of the things that I'd like to tell people is, if a lot is really important to you, I know when my husband and I were looking for our personal home, it was kind of like we were looking for the yard first, and then we see if we like the house, because we had 3 big dogs. We also do rescue for dogs. So at any given time, we could have a few extra puppies on our hands, and we needed a big yard. And so with that, some of the things that I tell people is maybe consider a resale or an older property that you could renovate. You might get a better price. You're definitely going to get that lot, but you might have to do a little bit to the interior. We have spent the last 12 years renovating our property. It's now pretty much everything we want. However, when we bought this house 12 years ago, it was nothing like we wanted on the inside, but it did have the yard. And something you will hear me preach over and over and over when you're looking at real estate, whether it's here in Georgia or wherever you are in the US, there are a couple of things that you cannot change about a house. You can never change the location. So make sure you like the area that you're in first. Make sure that it's got the grocery stores you're looking for, or it's close to shopping if that's what you're into, or restaurants. It's around people that you want to be within. It's got the diversity that you're looking for, the schools that you're looking for. Anything like that about the location itself is first in line of your needs. Second in line of your needs is going to be the lot. You cannot change the lot for the most part. Now, yes, you can bring in dirt, you can grade lots, you can put in a pool, you can fill in a pool if that's what you want. There are things like that that you can definitely change the lot for a little bit. But if you're living on the side of a mountain or you're living on a sloped yard, there's going to be very little that you can do to change that other than, again, bringing in dirt, maybe tiering the yard. Especially here in Georgia, we've got kind of an area here in the suburbs that we're right at the foot of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so you've got these rolling hills. So a lot of times I tell people, if you've got a flat front yard, you probably have a slope in the back. And if you have a flat backyard, you've probably got a slope in your driveway. Those are just some of the things that you have to accommodate when you're looking at living in Georgia. Now, not all of them are going to be that way, but it is a big feature that you have to really consider. And so if that is something that bothers you about the lot, you need to reconsider, because location and lot are two things that you really cannot change. Everything else about a home can pretty much be changed. You can take down walls, you can paint walls, you can renovate kitchens, bathrooms, you can even add on square footage if that's something that you need. You can finish out a basement. So those things, don't let those block your view. If you see a home that has the perfect location, has the perfect lot, and you go in and you're like, oh, look at this horrible paint color, stop. Hire a painter. It's going to cost you $6,000. They're going to paint the whole house white because that's what everyone loves these days. And you're going to have a brand new house. You won't even recognize it. I've told you guys this story before. When I bought my very, very first home 16 years ago with my husband, we hated everything about the interior. And all it was the paint. We came back a few weeks later. It had been on the market for a while because keep in mind, this was back in 2008. We're right in the middle of everything, falling apart. So the home had been on the market for a little while. Finally, the seller decided to paint the maroon and forest green walls all a clean beige. And so we saw it pop up on the market again, and we went back and looked at it. It was like a whole different house. And so we went ahead and put an offer in on it, and we loved it. And we lived there for quite a while before we left Flowery Branch and made the move to Swanee, just, to be closer to friends and family. So that's something that I definitely want you guys to take into consideration if you guys are thinking about looking at buying a home. So let's go to the comments. What is the average income required in Milton? Carl, that is a fantastic question. It didn't show it specifically on this app that I was looking at. However, I can tell you that the average price point in Milton for buying a home, you're looking at about $925,000 currently. And the only reason I think it's at that, there are two listings right now that one is at $550,000. You're more buying the land because the house is a tear down. And then the other one that's at $725,000, again, has a little bit of land, but it's a much older home. Every other listing in Milton, other than those two, is over $1 million. So I think you're probably looking at a solid, $175,000 to $200,000 a year that you're needing to, make. However, where I think a lot of this, you have to keep in mind is how much money did you put down? So if you're looking at, you own a property in, say, New York or California, and when you sell that property, you're going to make a substantial amount off of it because you've got so much equity built in. Or even heck, here in Georgia, if you're selling your property and you've owned it for the last 14, 15 years and you've got a ton of equity and you're turning around and putting that down on that property, well, now you've significantly reduced the amount of the monthly payment that you're going to be looking at for that home. So that's going to change what you really are needing to, earn annually to be able to afford that property. That's why with this whole thing, I want you guys to understand that really and truly, if you're thinking about buying a home, even in the next year, if you're looking in 2025, I always say it is never too early to talk to a lender because they are the only ones that are going to truly be able to look at what your income is, what your debt to income ratios are, if you have a car payment, if you have student loans, if you're paying child support or alimony, or you have credit cards, any of the bills that you have coming out each month. They're looking at what you make versus what you have going out. And then they can kind of talk you through what price point you would like to be in. And you can even tell them, hey, I've been paying rent for the last 2 years. I'm paying $3,000 a month. And that's a comfortable place for me. I don't really want to go above $3,000. And they could kind of back you in and show you, okay, well, for $3,000 a month with this interest rate, and you're telling me that you're putting 10% down, this right here is going to be the price point, around $500,000 or $550,000 that you and your realtor should be comfortably looking at. And that way, when you finally get ready a year from now, you and I talk and you're like, okay, I've already talked to the lender. I don't want to go above $550,000 because it's out of my comfort zone as a monthly payment. They may be able to qualify you for higher than that, but that doesn't mean that you have to spend that. You want to make sure that you're looking at a monthly payment because let's face it, most of us are looking at that monthly payment and what we are comfortable spending each month. And so you want to talk to the lender because they're really and truly the only one that is going to give you the true guidance and realistic numbers that fit you specifically. This is not a one size fits all. If you need a lender, if you're thinking about looking in the metro Atlanta area, I do have a lender that I work with very often because I trust him. He will be the first one to tell you now's not the time. You need to keep saving or you need to pay off this debt. And that's why I actually really like talking to them ahead of time. Because if you do need to keep saving or you do need to pay off a student loan or a credit card, anything like that, you have time, right? You have time to kind of think about the process. You have time to talk with them, get your ducks in a row because my ducks aren't always in a row. Sometimes they're flying all over the place and I need somebody to kind of help me put them back in order. And so that's what a lender is for. And we just kind of work as a team, even if it's down the line. I have a client that's looking at moving next summer in 2025. We still talk regularly. She still talks to my lender regularly because they're just basically, she's using him as almost like a financial advisor. Obviously, he's not looking at all of her finances and stocks and things like that, but he's able to give her guidance as to what she should be paying off because some people think, oh, I should pay off all my credit cards and close them. Bad idea. Horrible idea because now you have no credit. I learned that the hard way very early on. Now you've cut off all your credits. You don't want to do that. So really and truly talking to a lender is going to give you the best knowledge to kind of make a plan for yourself moving forward. So just Carl, I hope that helped. I hope that helped. Milton is a great place. Don't get me wrong. Would love to live there. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's also absolutely incredibly expensive. Can't change your neighbors. That's a good one, Miss Betty. Definitely cannot change your neighbors. It is something where if you ever have gone to look at houses with me, I know a couple of you have. I'm nosy, y'all. I'm real nosy because while you're looking around the house to see if you love it and you love how the bathroom is, I'm walking around the house looking at everything that I can find wrong. Not in a negative way, but in a realistic way. Am I seeing any spots on the ceilings? Am I seeing any cracks in the floor, the foundation? And then I'm going on the back porch and I'm doing this right here. I'm looking at your neighbor because I want to see, are they trashy? Are they really nasty back there? Do they just have crap everywhere? Do they have, 19 cars in the front yard? Because if you do, I'm not hating on you, but I don't want you to be my next door neighbor because I want my home value to stay where it's at and increase. And if you have 19 cars in the front, maybe a couple of them are missing wheels, you bring down my value, and that's making me a little bit mad. So your neighbors, it's definitely something. Look, while you're in your due diligence period, if you decide to move forward on the house and you have inspection period, go to the house when it's pouring down rain if it does. Go to the house a couple of times, like when school's letting out. Watch all the kids. Go to the house again when it's 5 o'clock and people are getting home. Sit in the neighborhood, stalk it, because this is your one and only chance to see what's going on in that neighborhood and see, do you really like the vibe that's going on in there? So yes, neighbors is a big one. Howdy, ma'am. Hope you've been thriving in Dawsonville. Miss Betty, y'all, I love how y'all just, you know, have this little relationship there. I was looking forward to a cost of living break moving Washington to Georgia, but it sounds like things will be about even by the time we get there. That's interesting because I've always heard that Washington is a little bit more expensive. So, John, now I'm going to have to do a little bit deeper of a dive into that because I've always been told, and even the stats that I've looked at, that Washington was more affordable. But I will say that Georgia has definitely increased over the last 4 years since COVID. We've seen substantial growth in cost over the last 4 years. I can't deny that at all. I would be completely lying to you if I said we haven't. So, like I said, it really depends on the area. And so that's something that I would truly consider if you guys are thinking about moving here. I would look at the different areas because the cost of living, like I said, in Alpharetta or Milton is going to be substantially higher than if you're looking at some of the other suburbs that are actually just down the street. So, does loud exhaust bother you, Mama L? Well, I will have to say no, because my husband has multiple race cars. And so I don't really have a choice. That was just kind of known going into marriage. I knew that that was going to be a thing. And so that was one of the things, if I thought it was going to bother me, I shouldn't have married the man that I have. But I chose to. And so I just tune it out. Don't listen to it, even though he rattles my cabinets sometimes. So, one last thing that I want to share with you guys that I honestly wasn't thinking or wasn't planning on putting in this video because it's something that just happened about an hour before I went on this live. But I feel like I need to share it with you guys because it really chapped my behind. And it's going to make realtors not look good. But again, my promise to you on this live is to always be honest and truthful with you. And it's one of the things that in my industry right now, it's kind of hard to be a realtor right now. I'm not going to lie to you because when I scroll on Instagram, which I probably shouldn't be, but I am, there is so much hate towards realtors right now. It is painful. I hear all the time that we're just door openers and we get overpaid for just opening a door. What do I need you for? I could do that myself. Forget the fact that we're arranging the inspection. We're finding the lender for you. We're setting up all of the inspections. We're attending them. We're going through with a fine-tooth comb. We're contacting the closing attorney, walking you through every process and making sure that literally litigation wise, we're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's. But earlier today, I have a client who is selling their home here in Georgia, and they worked with me to sell their home here. Now they're making a move to Tennessee. They're going to be closer to family and their daughter. Well, the agent that they had been working with in Tennessee, I have no acknowledgement of who that is. And I'm going to not say names just to probably not get myself sued. But the agent in Tennessee they had worked with earlier this year, and this is kind of something we've been working with over the last 6 months because I didn't want to put their home on the market until they had a place to go because I knew their home would sell quickly. And they finally found a place, but it wasn't with the agent they had originally talked with. This agent had shown them property in a very specific local area, and then they ended up going outside of that area, and they called her and told her, we don't want to look in this particular area that you're showing us anymore. We want to go further out. And she said to them, I am not familiar with those areas. I can't service you there. And so they said, okay. They worked with a different realtor at that time to then look outside of the area that she felt comfortable in. Well, today they signed on their home here to close, and they're now working to make the move to Tennessee. And unfortunately, they get a call from an attorney. That realtor is putting a pause basically on their closing because she's saying that she was owed a commission on this home that they're about to purchase, even though she was not the procuring cause of that sale and she did not show them that property. Here's the kicker, and this is what I want you guys to know. Because they signed a buyer brokerage agreement with her and it did not specify an area, it said in there 60 days that they were her client, and they found a home in that time frame. Even though they used another agent, she still had that buyer brokerage agreement. And what they should have done, lesson learned, and I want you guys to hear this. If you're working with a realtor and it's just not working out anymore, y'all just aren't vibing, they say that they can't help you in a specific area, you just decide, I don't want to do this anymore, we're not buying, put it in writing. All you have to do is send an email saying, thank you for your service. We are no longer in need. Please send us a termination of our buyer brokerage agreement. Have a great day. And then you have it in writing that you stated you are no longer working together. You have to read through that buyer brokerage agreement that you're signing with that realtor, because otherwise something like this could happen. Now they have had to push the closing on their home in Tennessee to make sure that they're getting this squared away. I talked to them for an hour. They were greatly, greatly upset. And I, for one, was really pissed with this other agent because this is the stuff that makes us look bad. This is the stuff of why we're going through a lawsuit right now. This is the stuff that makes people talk so bad about us and put us in categories that I don't want to be in. So if you're an agent on here, please stop doing stupid crap to make me look bad. And number two, if you're a buyer or a listing, if you're a seller or a buyer, make sure that that agent is going over that paperwork with you and you're realizing what you're signing. Go over it with a fine-tooth comb, because unfortunately, when you sign a contract, you're bound to it. And unless you put it in writing that you're canceling that contract, it can come back to bite you. So I hope that made sense. Let's make sure in the comments, I want to make sure that good, because I'm a Mustang guy. I have a client right now, loan, that has 3 older Mustangs. Super cool. I'll have to show you a picture sometime. They live down the street, so I can handle that. 6%ers. I don't care if you get 6%, Ray, if you disclosed it. If you disclosed it and the seller agreed to it or the buyer agreed to it, charge 6%, charge 10% for all I care, as long as everybody knew about it, signed off on it, and agreed about it. So that's all I'm saying. Excellent idea, lower taxes. Where I live in VA, there's plenty of guys with jacked up trucks and loud exhausts. That's here in Georgia as well. For a fair comparison, we're in a smaller town in an unincorporated area, so our costs are lower than closer into the big city. So it sounds kind of like the metro Atlanta area, the suburbs here in Georgia. So I feel like maybe it is going to be a trade. Obviously, I don't know your housing prices in your specific area and specific zone, but here in Georgia, the metro Atlanta area is definitely going to be much more affordable than if you're getting close to the city. So Carl, how do newcomers decide on the location to live in Georgia? That's a fantastic question. So most of the time what happens is I have a lot of people that will watch my videos and then they'll contact me and say, hey, based on your videos, these are the areas that I'm thinking. Then I go into an exploratory conversation with you to kind of ask you, I don't want to just know about what you're doing, on a day-to-day. I want to know, like, what is your goal for the weekend? If you're not working, what are you doing? Are you hanging out? Are you wanting to go, eat out at restaurants? Are you wanting to go shopping? Do you want to completely be away from everything? Are schools important to you? Do you have dogs? Are, yard going to be important to you? There's a lot of exploratory questions that I'm going to ask, because that will really help me to tell you, okay, I know you said you chose these 4 areas that you were looking at. However, one of those areas is right in the middle of everything. And you said that you really don't want to be around the hustle and bustle. So you might want to take, a thought around that. And then I have a lot of people that will come and take an exploratory trip. And those are super fun because you come here to Georgia. Like I said, I have a client. He's flying in Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. We're going to drive around all of the areas that we've talked about. I basically pick you up, drive around all of the towns, almost like a little tour guide. I'm going to tell you all the restaurants, the shopping. I'm going to show you some houses in those areas so that you can get a feel for what your money is actually going to buy you in each area. We'll talk about, are you open to new construction or are you looking at resale, and kind of get a feel for what you're looking at as far as the house, because then that's going to help me kind of explore, is what you're looking for obtainable to you in this particular area? And if it's not, what areas should we be looking at where it is more obtainable? And so again, just really conversation, communication, you being honest with me about what you're looking for, not just in the home, but in your lifestyle in this move, because it's a pretty big deal, especially if you're making a move from out of state and you're packing up your whole life, your family, whoever, and making a move to, a new state. That's a really big deal. And we want to make sure that it's the right one off the jump. So I'm going to ask you a ton of questions. They are personal, but it's not personal, if that makes sense. And I'm going to drive you around. If you take that exploratory trip, I try to tell people take at least one exploratory trip, at least one, because you might be surprised when you get here. I think if you guys saw my video a couple weeks ago, I had a client that was dead set they were moving to Cumming, dead set they were moving to Cumming. And then they got here and they hated Cumming. They did not want to live in Cumming. Cumming is a great area. It was a little further out for them. They wanted to be closer to shopping and restaurants and walkability. And Cumming is still a little bit further out where you have a lot of shopping, but you have to drive to it. So they decided, you know what, that's just not for us. We want to be a little bit closer in. And so we shifted gears and they're actually looking at buying a home over in the Woodstock area. So similar vibe, a little bit more walkability based on the location in Woodstock that they're purchasing. So that exploratory trip is going to do wonders for you. Carl, I hope that helped answer that question for you. They should have fired her. I agree. And they did, but only verbally. Make sure you put it in writing. Dirtbag move right there. Absolutely. It depends on what lifestyle you want, Carl M. I know a lot about Georgia. Exactly what I just said there. 1,000 acres, my own well, and my own gun range. Now we are cooking with chicken, right? I feel like my husband might come and live on your property if you're talking about guns and cooking with chicken. So that is definitely available here. 1,000 acres, you're probably looking at a little bit pricey, but in the North Georgia area, you can definitely get acreage. I have a client that just moved out to the Toccoa area. Toccoa is gorgeous. You're looking in the North Georgia mountains. If you're still wanting to be kind of close in, you can look in Clarksville. They've got a little downtown, but you're still kind of, out there a little bit more rural. You're not going to be on top of your neighbors. And that's why I say that exploratory trip is so important. They should go rent first and check it out before moving. It really depends. I have a lot of people that once they do that exploratory trip, they kind of see the vibe, they're 100% ready to make a move and put down roots. Other people, they need to come and rent in the area that they're really leaning towards before they can put down roots. And you can always, rent for 6 months, even a year, to really get to know the community and the area and see if that makes sense to you to be where you are. Like, is it everything that you thought that it was going to be? A good agent is worth their weight in gold. Navigating the selling process would have been horrible without our agent. I appreciate that, John, because I agree with you. Not because just I'm a realtor, but I feel like we offer a lot if you have a good agent. And sadly, I'll be the first one to say there's a lot of bad apples right now. So hopefully this year and some of the things that are coming down the pipe with the National Association of Realtors will get some of those bad apples out. And, we will definitely regain. But I always tell people that it is so important. This is probably the most money you're going to spend to date. Do not just look up the first person. If this person came referred to you by multiple people, go for it. If not, and you have no idea, look at their reviews. Still, look at them on Instagram, look at them on YouTube, look at, their production. Have they sold one home? Did you guys know that 40 Over 40% of real estate agents last year only sold one home. That's mind blowing to me. So you literally aren't a real estate agent. You don't know what you're doing. You've only sold one. How are you negotiating? How are you working the process? So do your homework, you guys. And if you're looking in a specific area, I'm happy. I've got real estate agents across the country. If I don't have one in your area, I'll just let you know. Sorry, I don't have anybody there. But if you do need a referral, ask me. I'm happy to share the ones that I do have. What about Powder Springs area? That's actually a very pretty area. So it's kind of on the west side. You're going towards Alabama, but obviously not that far. It is a little bit more rural. You're going to definitely get more bang for your buck. The average home price in Powder Springs right now, I think, is just right at $300,000. And you are going to get a little bit more land there because it's not as expensive to build in Powder Springs. You're definitely a little bit further away from the city. And the further away from the city you get, the not more expensive, the less expensive it gets. Albany, Georgia. Now you're getting way on out there. So yes, you could definitely get it. How much is farmland per acre, more or less? You can kind of, again, this goes by area. So it's not a fair assessment, but you're looking at about $8,000 to $10,000 an acre if you're in more rural areas. I have a client that just bought, husband, if you're on this live, remind me of the town that they bought in. I'm drawing a blank. Right outside of Athens, if you go past Athens. Anyways, close to Commerce. They bought, it's a beautiful trailer. It had 2 barns, 10 acres, like absolutely gorgeous. And they bought the whole thing for $350,000. And that's including all of the barns, that's including the housing. So $350,000. And they were able to get right at 10 acres with all of that. And it is absolutely gorgeous. It's right off of one of the main areas there. I'll be honest, you don't have grocery stores that are super close. You don't have any restaurants that are super close. You're probably looking at about a 20-minute drive. But if you're good with that, it is an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous property. And you literally feel like it's just a little piece of pie to yourself because you don't have anyone around you. The property that's across the street is literally the 1,000 acres that you talked about that's been in that family for years. Let's pray that they don't sell out because we've seen a few people doing that recently. However, definitely something to consider. My uncle used to live in Albany. It's definitely a pretty area. Have you seen clients move out of the city because they could work remotely only to have to move closer in if something changed and they had to commute again? Honestly, John, I haven't. So here in Georgia, when COVID hit, nobody really did anything in 2020 as far as that goes. But in 2021, we did see a lot more people that lived in the city moving a little bit further out. And they have not had to return full time. The people that did have to return, a lot of their companies scaled down. And so they only have to go in maybe 2 days a week. And so they were like, it's totally worth it for me to have a bigger home, a bigger yard, a yard for my dog. You know, they liked it so much that they said, I'll commute in those 2 days and I'll stay where I'm at. I actually have one client that she was so dead set on not having to go back in. If you lived with like outside of a certain district, they would not require you to come back in anymore. So she kept her apartment in the city and she bought a home literally in the Blue Ridge Mountains because that would take her outside of that zone where you have to return. And so she bought a house out there. She still will come into her apartment in the city some, but for the most part, she stays out there. Her requirements were, I want my own well and I want to be near a stream because I want to know that water is there. And she bought a little cabin in the middle of nowhere and she absolutely loves it. So we haven't seen a ton of people making the move back. I have seen some articles on that, especially in like the New York area. But here in Georgia, we have not seen a ton about that. Yes, about the remote office stuff in Atlanta, is that still going on? Most of the people here, like I said, have continued to stay remote. And if they've had to go back in, it's been just like 1 or 2 days a week. I will say the flip side to that, if there is a negative, is there's a lot of office space here in Atlanta that is vacant. So, like I've shared on another video, the city of Atlanta is actually looking at taking a lot of that commercial space and turning that into condos or living space, because that's something that obviously we're in need of. And there's a lot ever since COVID happened and a lot of people worked remote, and companies realized I don't necessarily have to have this huge office. I don't have to have my employees in here 5 days a week. If we just meet a couple days a week to have that face-to-face time, because I do feel like that's still really important, the face-to-face time. That if we just do a smaller office 2 days a week, it's much more affordable for the company. Our people are happier. And, you know, a lot of people were able to move and have a little bit better quality of life if they were looking to get into the burbs. So when I lived in Georgia as a kid, I was in Paulding County. One of my good friends is from Paulding County. So that's definitely, it's a little bit more rural area, but it's a good time. Can you summarize why people are leaving Georgia? Well, we have a number of different reasons, honestly. You might get transferred out to another state. The guy that I told you about that bought here in 2021 that was starting up Microsoft, he's done. He's going back out to the West Coast to work at that office. So he's going to be selling his place and transferring back out. I had a client that last year moved because of family reasons. They left and went to be with family in Chicago. We've had some people that honestly, they moved here during the pandemic because, let's be honest, Georgia was open. A lot of other states were not. And they moved here just kind of in the throes of everything. It's a little chaotic during that time. And I feel like a lot of people moved here because schools were open. We were out and about and they were tired of being shut down. And I think a lot of people, now that the chaos is over, they miss home. They miss where they were, even if it is New York, Montana, Wyoming, wherever it was that was home, and they moved here and they got settled and now they've been here for a while and the chaos has quieted. They miss family that didn't move here. They miss what they knew and their comfort zone. And maybe they just didn't settle in here. So I have had a couple of clients that returned to where they originally moved from. So there's a lot of different reasons that we see people, leave the Peach State. I've had a couple of people recently that are retiring and they're moving to Florida. But then again, I've got so many people that are from Florida moving into Georgia. So it's always going to be this cycle of people moving in and people moving out. Yes, so that messes up the commercial properties. Trouble is conversions are very expensive. They are, but it's something that's going to have to happen. The buildings are already there. It doesn't make sense to tear them down. And quite frankly, I think it's a great thing that people are being able to work from home. So if that's what they need to do, then we're going to have to make that happen. Have you been to Dahlonega? Oh, yes. So my grandparents actually live in Dawsonville, which is just south of Dahlonega. We go to Dahlonega regularly. They've got the Gold Rush Festival, which is probably one of the best. They've got adorable little downtown. I tell people, if you haven't been to Dahlonega, just go watch a Hallmark movie. You've probably seen it in a Hallmark movie because the little square with the lights and Santa Claus is out, that's Dahlonega Square. Plus, they've got a fantastic college. North Georgia is up there. So if that's something that interests people, is a beautiful, beautiful campus. You do get a little bit more for your money as far as housing, but it's starting to creep up. So don't think that Dahlonega is going to be one of those places where you're just going to steal a house nowadays like you used to, because it's not. People are starting to really turn on to Dahlonega. So Ray, you better keep that in mind. Yeah, Dahlonega is beautiful. It's also a place that you'll find a lot of people going and what is it called? Like riding on the weekends, because you have a lot of motorcycles and cars, especially in the fall. Oh my gosh, the traffic going up Highway 400 during the fall when the leaves are changing for like those couple of weekends is a madhouse, because all of the cars, all of the bikes go out on the weekends and just drive because it's freaking gorgeous up in Dahlonega. And my favorite winery is there. It's called Wolf Mountain, and it's got gorgeous views of the mountains. So they miss New York. I've never been to New York, so I can't say a good thing or a bad thing. But, if your family is there, you never know. All depends if they're fully depreciated or not. Very true. Also the wineries. Yes, Miss Betty, that is right along. There's a couple of different wineries up there. Montaluce is another one. My personal favorite just happens to be Wolf Mountain because I love the views. The food is really good. The company is usually great. So that's one that I would say, definitely to check out if you're in the area. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I sincerely appreciate it. I hope that this helped. If you guys have any questions or thoughts, anything that you want me to make sure that I go over, please don't hesitate to either drop it in the chat, drop a comment later, or shoot me an email. I want to make sure that we're getting you guys all of the information that you need. As always, I will see you guys next Thursday, 7 o'clock. Have a great weekend.